Chapter 1. The Case of the Living Vines. It was late, but Professor Sprout was still in the greenhouse, pruning mandrake sprouts for the first year's lesson. The air inside was warm and still, thick with the smell of damp earth and growing things. A single lamp glowed over her work table, throwing a soft circle of light across the pots, shears, and watering tins spread before her. She paused and looked up into the dark beyond the lamp's reach. Just months before, the greenhouse had been shattered and broken in the aftermath of the Battle of Hogwarts. Even after all the repairs, it still felt strange to see the place so calm again, as though the building itself had not yet decided whether it trusted peace. At last, she looked back down at her work and whispered, "Finally." Then she frowned. For a moment, she thought she had imagined it. But there it was again, a whisper, faint and dry, almost like a breath through leaves. Professor Sprout went still and lifted her head. The sound seemed to come from one of the Abyssinian shrivel figs near the back of the room. That made no sense. Shrivel figs did not whisper. They did not move, either. But one of the branches had begun to curl. Slowly, carefully, it snaked out over the edge of the pot and around her wrist. At first, it felt only curious, like a child tugging at a sleeve. Then the grip tightened. Professor Sprout did not panic. She had seen enough strange things over the years to know that panic never helped. But her face changed all the same, becoming very still, very quiet. She stared at the plant with a look that was neither fear nor surprise, but something far more unsettling. "Yes," she whispered. "I hear you." The next day, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley sat at their desks in the Ministry of Magic, shuffling through reports and trying to find a misplaced letter that Ron had been certain was there only moments before. The letter was important, the key piece of evidence in a case against two Death Eaters, Hemley and Proctor, both of whom had claimed they had been forced into fighting during the Battle of Hogwarts. The letter proved otherwise. It showed they had chosen their side freely. Arthur Weasley came over to their desks with the mildly worried expression he wore when he suspected disaster was already underway. "All set with those files, are you?" Ron turned, and Harry, catching sight of the missing letter sticking halfway out of his back pocket, reached over and snatched it out before Ron could notice. "All set, sir," Harry said, sliding the letter into the leather folder and handing it over. Arthur took the folder. "Good work. Oh, I nearly forgot. There's been a report of cursed plants at Hogwarts. Professor Sprout's had something of a fright." Ron blinked. "Professor Sprout? Frightened by a plant?" "She thinks it may be residual magic from the battle," Arthur said. "She asked us to take a look." "We'll deal with it," Harry said. "Hopefully quickly, sir." Arthur hesitated, then added, "And take Longbottom with you, if you need him. He could do with getting out of the office, and I'm sure Professor Sprout would be pleased to see him." Soon after, Harry and Ron took the flow to Hogsmeade, arriving by way of the Auror office fireplace above Honeydukes. From there, they made their way up to the castle by Thistral trolley. The sight of Hogwarts again stirred something uneasy in Harry. It had been well over a year since he had last set foot there. And though the castle looked peaceful in the daylight, he could not shake the feeling that it remembered too much. At the gates, they were met by Headmistress McGonagall. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," she said. "Afternoon, Professor," they replied together. McGonagall opened the gate and studied Harry for a moment, as though she understood exactly what this visit meant to him. "It's good to have you back, if only for a short while. How long has it been?" "Months." "We've meant to come back," Harry said. "We've just been busy." "Well, you're here now," McGonagall said, "though I wish it were under better circumstances." Ron, who never liked long introductions when a problem was waiting to be solved, asked at once, "What exactly is happening to the plants?" "That's just it," McGonagall replied. "No one has been able to make much sense of it. Whatever it is, it feels dark, something left behind after the war." She set off toward the greenhouse office with them at her side. "We've been instructed by the minister to report anything unusual left behind by spells or curses," she added. "Professor Sprout can tell you more." They found Professor Sprout waiting at the entrance to the greenhouse office. She greeted them warmly, but Harry noticed at once that she seemed distracted, as though she were listening to something no one else could hear. "We've had reports," Harry began, "and it seems there may be. The plants are just adjusting," Professor Sprout said quietly. Harry stopped. "Professor, there was a great deal of dark magic left behind," she said, and this time her voice was softer still. As she spoke, Harry saw a vine behind her rise and move in a way that was far too deliberate to be natural. It curved subtly, almost as though it were mirroring her. Ron and Harry exchanged a look. Professor," Harry said, nodding toward the plant. Sprout turned, saw the vine, and took a step back. "See," she said. "Something is affecting it." Harry told Professor Sprout he needed to contact the ministry. The two Aurors moved into a smaller room beside the greenhouse office to talk more privately. "We need some help," Harry said once they were out of earshot. "Yeah," Ron muttered, "preferably someone who knows his way around dangerous plants." Harry nodded. "Your father suggested Neville." Ron raised his eyebrows. That was sensible. He took out his comm coin, tapped it with his wand, and spoke clearly into it. "Neville Longbottom, Harry and Ron need you at Hogwarts. We're with Professor Sprout. It's plants. Bad ones." Harry snorted despite himself. "Nice. A moment later, the coin vibrated, gave a glow, and Neville's voice came back, a little crackly but unmistakable. I'm on my way. By late afternoon, the grounds had begun to darken, the greenhouses falling into shadow beneath the castle. Harry and Ron set up a table and chairs in one of the unused greenhouses, though neither of them sat for long. Students were avoiding the area altogether now, and classes had been moved elsewhere. Even from the inside, Harry could feel the odd tension in the air. The plants were behaving strangely around them. Ron noticed it first. Look at that, he said. They're following us. Harry frowned. A vine near the far wall had shifted when Ron moved, and now seemed to be watching them with an eerie kind of attention. Neville arrived a little later, with that careful, quick look he got when he was trying not to let anyone see that he was worried. Harry filled him in as quickly as he could, then lifted a potted plant onto the table. The instant he let go, a cluster of vines lashed out. Harry jerked his hands back just in time, the green tendrils missing his fingers by inches before snapping back into the pot. Blimey, Ron said. They're getting aggressive. Neville stepped closer. The plant changed at once. It drew back from him. Harry stared. It isn't normal growth, Neville said slowly. It isn't doing this on its own. It's responding, almost like a consciousness. He paused, looking at the pot with narrowed eyes. It didn't just back off, he said. It bowed. Ron gave him a sideways look. It's a shrivel fig, Nev. I don't think it's picking favorites. Before anyone could say more, a student screamed outside. Harry and Ron were out of the greenhouse in an instant. On the grounds, a young Hufflepuff student was being dragged along by the ankles by a vine that had burst up through the earth. More tendrils surged after him, reaching for his legs and arms. Harry and Ron raised their wands together. Reducto. Twin flashes of red light struck the vine and tore it away from the boy. The student scrambled to his feet and ran for the castle as more vines rose from the ground. Harry and Ron stepped forward to cast again, but Neville moved in front of them before they could. Neville! Harry shouted. He had no wand in his hand. Still, he went straight toward the vines. For a moment, the writhing growth drew back, snake-like and wary. Harry and Ron hesitated, afraid of striking Neville by accident. Then Neville reached out, not with force, but with something closer to calm. The plant began to settle. The frantic motion slowed, and the vines sank back into the earth. At last, Harry lowered his wand. I know you're good with plants, he said, still staring at the patch of ground where the vines had disappeared. But what was that? Neville turned back to them, shaken. It felt like it knew me, he said. Ron looked at him. A plant? It's not the plants, Neville said. It's something else. Harry thought about the whispering, the way the vine had moved, the strange attention it had shown Neville. A curse left over from the battle, he said at last. We need more information. As Neville, I'm going to suggest to Ron's father that you be assigned here just until we figure this out. You can keep an eye on the greenhouse. Ron nodded. And Harry and I'll see what kind of curse does this sort of thing. We'll figure it out, Harry said. That night, Professor Sprout had prepared a bed for Neville in the greenhouse, and she seemed genuinely pleased to have him there. She told him he was wasting his time as an Auror and that he ought to be teaching at Hogwarts. I can't do this forever, she said, more quietly now. Since the war, I've felt as though I need a rest. Neville lay awake for a long time after she left. The greenhouse was very still. Somewhere outside, the castle creaked in the night, and the small lamp by his bed cast soft shadows across the glass walls. Then he noticed the plant that had attacked Harry earlier. It was moving faintly from side to side, as though it were watching him. Slowly, one of the vines reached toward his face. Neville did not move away. He felt it before he heard it. A whisper, thin and cold and hissing, like a snake passing through dry grass. He closed his eyes and said very quietly, almost to himself, We ended it. I know we did. The vine hovered for a moment, inches from his face. Then, just as slowly, it withdrew and lay still again in its pot.